we at the point where I can start?
We're ready.
All righty, thank you. Well, good evening. We hereby call the Planning Commission meeting of May 19th, 2021 to order. I've got just a couple of notes to read off initially. So items on the agenda can be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items may be combined. And we have received a request from the folks that have a land management plan item. We've had a request to move their item up to item number 2. And I'd like to go ahead and do that. It's to allow them to return to their homes. Apparently they have flights to catch and so on. So if there are no objections, we'll take what is currently the 4th item of the agenda and move it up to right behind item number 1. All right? So the meeting's been called to order, and let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we begin the meetings typically with a public comment period, and during this portion of the agenda, the comments must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Each person would have up to 5 minutes to speak, and if an agenda item is also listed as a public hearing, persons may wait to speak until that particular item. And I would point out that while the item, and of course this is going to create, shifting an item is going to create confusion for the rest of the meeting, but the St. Jude's Ranch item, which is currently listed on the agenda, is item number 3. That is not a public hearing, but I would allow comments during that period. And I'll just say I'd encourage folks to perhaps hear what staff has to say and what the St. Jude's representatives have to say, and provide comments at that point. However, this is a public comment period, and if anyone would like to make comments on any item of the agenda, please let me know. Seeing none, let's close that initial public comment period. Whoop. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I forget. For those who are watching live stream, they may call in to provide comments either now or during any of the public comment periods throughout the meeting. The number they would call us, contact us on is 702-589-9629. And there is a delay, so I'll give a minute and a half to receive comments in case somebody wants to call in.
Public comment.
Oh, hi there. I just wanted to let you know this is Camila Ariati. I'm attending virtually. Hold on, Henry, it's over in the kitchen. But I have a surgical procedure tomorrow, so I can't be there, but I'm online if you need me.
Your item is last on the agenda. Do you want to give me
I understand.
Do you want to call in then, or do you want me to call you when it's time?
I just was letting you know. You can call me if you need me.
And can you provide me your number?
702-335-5222. We have colonoscopies in the morning, and...
Okay, you're on live, so we'll call you back.
Whatever. All right,
you.
thanks.
Bye.
It sounds like we have no additional comments, so we'll move on to the first item of action. That is approval of the minutes of the April 21st, 2021 regular meeting. And does anyone on the commission have comments or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, so that moves us to the item that was previously number 4 on the agenda. For possible action, this is amendment to the 2021 land management process list. It's resolution number 1202, City of Boulder City, and it's an area west of US 95, approximately 1/2 mile south of I-11. And this will be a public hearing and a recommendation of the City Council on an amendment to the land management process list for 2021. And this is an additional renewable energy development.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
Susan.
Chairman. As an overview, the land management process provides a transparent, structured process for the review of requests to utilize or dispose of city-owned land. Chapter 2 of Title 9 of the City Code regulates this process, which includes a recommendation from the Planning Commission for new properties or uses proposed for the land management process list. An applicant has requested that approximately 100 acres be added to the list, and on April 13th, the City Council forwarded this proposal to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and recommendation. The purpose of this ordinance is to establish a formalized and public procedure for the possible disposition of city lands and to allow property owners in the vicinity of such future sales or leases to have input into the process prior to action being taken by the City Council. The process does not negate the need for voter approval where required. It's just simply the first in many steps of a potential land lease or sale process. In this case, for lands in the El Dorado Valley or anything that is non-residential in nature, a lease process is used. For this particular request, the applicant is Skylar Energy Resources, and they are requesting to add approximately 100 acres west of the highway in order to expand the existing Townsite Southwest solar project in that area. And that's already under construction. It too went through the land management process, a few years back for actually, I believe, 2 different phases. With regard to that area, and perhaps Holly could put up that one map that they provided, it's not anticipated that there will be any utilities needed for the use unless they choose to pursue battery storage, which I don't believe is necessarily part of the first phases of the project. And land in the immediate area is either vacant or leased for the Townsite Southwest Solar Project. And again, this is called the Townsite Southwest Project because it's in what we call the original Townsite, the original 33 square miles of the city. Therefore, it's not part of the El Dorado Valley transfer area, and the dry lake bed is not nearby, and there are no multi-species habitat conservation areas. So the map that's on screen now and that you have in your packets, all of the gray areas are the existing lease areas for the Townsite Southwest Solar Project. The blue area is the one they wish to add. So the job of the Planning Commission basically is to evaluate this request from a very broad land use level, just to make a recommendation as to whether or not that proposed use is appropriate for that particular area. the planning commission makes a recommendation, and the council will hold another hearing and decide whether or not to put it on the list. If it goes on the list, that means the city council can proceed with lease negotiations. And once the lease process is moving forward, only then will the city then move forward with the, any master plan and rezoning amendments that are needed. And in this case, they will need both, just like the prior development there did. So if the commission has any questions, I or the applicants are present to assist.
Question. In the thing, it talks about this is an expansion.
I'm sorry, you're not in the mic.
I'm sorry. The comments say that the development is within the expansion of Townsite solar project that's already underway. Can you just clarify for me on that map which one it is? Is it that item? Is it the one labeled 1, or is it all of those? Just if you can help me understand that.
All of the gray area on that map is the existing, the various phases of this Townsite Southwest project. So the blue area is the 100 acres we're discussing tonight.
So just to be clear in my mind, 1, 2, 3, and 4 Roman numerals, that's part of the already approved?
Yes, that's
site?
that's the gray areas I'm referring to.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I want to make sure.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions for staff? Does the applicant have anything that they would like to add? If so, please step up to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Linda Bullen. I'm an energy and environmental attorney from Las Vegas, and I'm representing and have been assisting the developer.
And I'm Rick Lammers with Skylar Energy Resources.
And we really have nothing in particular to add to the presentation, and thank you, Ms. Danielowitz. But again, here to answer any other questions and to thank you for moving us up so that he can get his flight back to Houston.
Yeah, much appreciated. Also appreciate the other interested parties on the agenda for allowing that to happen.
You're very welcome. Does anyone on the commission have questions for the applicant?
Just out of curiosity, in the packet, they were talking about potential battery storage. What do you think the likelihood of that is if you had to put a percentage on it that you would go through with that option?
I would say greater than 50% because most utilities now want the battery storage to be able to extend the solar into the evening hours when the energy is more needed. So it's probably a good chance that there will be batteries.
So that means you'll have to bring in infrastructure to that,
Well,
is that right?
there's several solutions. The least intrusive is to just put tanks nearby to utilize the water for that. We could put the battery storage if there's sufficient room at the existing substation where there already exists water. So it all depends on design later on. But the least intrusive, if it has to be on the new parcel, would be just to put some water tanks there nearby the battery storage.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Bielski.
If you went other than a water tank approach and you had actually city water provided to you, obviously I think in our package it indicates that there is an existing line that the city has that you would tap into, if I understand it correctly. Would it be adequate to cover the water requirement that you have, that you anticipate?
Right. The water ultimately would be determined by the fire marshal, but there will be, no matter what's required, there would be sufficient water through the city to be able to deal with whatever water requirements for the battery storage.
Yeah, and I'm more interested in would it require an increase, and, you know, I'm assuming you've kind of talked to them about it so that you might know, if not, okay.
Unlikely, because whatever's being used for Townsite first phase right now would no longer be required during construction, so that would relieve some water that's required during construction. Is your question more during operations?
Mhm. Right, more operation.
I don't think it would require anything that would be significantly more than what's required now.
Do the batteries themselves require cooling all the time?
They have within the battery container, they have an air conditioning system that's already within each container.
Okay, so it's not a water cooling?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the batteries and relative to, I think, BTM down in Phoenix, and one of the issues there was ventilation. So in your design, is the design directly accounted to some of the issues that occurred down there then?
Yeah, that particular event was not really, it was related to ventilation, but it was also a poor design in terms of the way it ran away. A lot has been learned since that event, and all of those learnings are being incorporated into the new design. So all containers are well ventilated. They have a lot of alarms that as soon as they detect a sense of heat, it cuts the system off to help avoid a runaway event like what occurred in Arizona.
What is the suppression design similar?
Yeah, most designs today are using like a gas. So as soon as a heat is detected, an excess heat is detected, the HVAC will shut down and the gas is released to suppress any fires before they really even develop. So the systems are designed to prevent that type of event from ever occurring.
Well, the reason I ask is because the suppression in Phoenix failed in terms of the episode that they had down there. And I'm wondering, is your batteries, are they the same? I know they're all lithium ion, but is the design differently than what they had down there?
It's more advanced, and the current systems are designed to prevent that type of event through this heat detection device that's in the HVAC system, which I don't think was present in the system in Phoenix.
One other quick question. What determined the design of your BESS in terms of megawatt hours size on this second phase?
It's really driven by the utility or the RFP for the power. So this power will more than likely be sold to a utility in response to a request for proposals. In those proposals, they say we want 4 hours, we want 8 hours. The trend in this region is to have greater duration. So more than likely the duration would be at least 4, maybe greater hours.
So the BESS is basically designed on the market?
The market requirements.
Right, okay.
Mr. DiTeresa.
This really isn't relevant to what we're deciding here tonight, but just to satisfy my own curiosity, there are two water lines in the El Dorado Valley currently. There's a 14-inch existing line and a 16-inch that hasn't been connected to and is empty currently. Do you know which water line you'll be tapping into?
Well, what we tap into currently is the temporary water line that flows to the other solar development that's being developed south of us. Also, there's another water line across Highway 95 that goes to the gravel pit. That's also a temporary line, so we would tap into either one of those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
I have another question. Just out of curiosity,
Mr. Rudd.
what's the revenue per year per acre on your?
Sorry, you need to talk in a microphone.
Oh, I don't have a microphone,
Well,
so.
you have to go to the podium, I'm sorry.
Never mind.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just remind the commissioners, I appreciate your curiosity, but your job tonight is not to get into future nitty-gritty details. That will be worked out at a later stage if the lease moves forward, and will go through thorough review by city staff and all required entities that will need to provide services for this. What's before the commission tonight is a broad recommendation on, is this an appropriate land use for that particular area?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much for making yourselves available this evening. So we'll bring it back to the commission, and just kind of building off of what Susan said, our job tonight is simply to identify whether we believe this is an appropriate use of this parcel of land. And if so, then this would be added to the land management plan list for the city council to ultimately vote on. So who would like to go first? I'd like to kind of hear some thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we.
Excuse me, this is a public hearing.
Oops, thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
My apologies to the audience. This is a public hearing. All who would wish to be heard on this matter, please, in an orderly manner, step up to the podium. For those who are watching online, again, the number to call in is 702-589-9629. Would anyone like to make comments? Once again, due to the delay, let's give it a minute. That seemed to be adequate. Hearing no comments, we'll close the public comment period of this item and move it back to the commission. I think before we start with the motion, I would like to make a comment on this item. The previous city council had commissioned a number of years ago a study into possible uses for the land in the area surrounding that interchange. And I'm talking, of course, about the I-11 Highway 95 interchange. And while I didn't necessarily, well, I'll say it this way, I fully agree that it was too early to develop that parcel of land in accordance with any of the potential options that were identified in that study. I think the study did provide us with some important information, and one piece of information would be the value of that land, the land surrounding that interchange. And I think it also pointed out that we're in a unique position as a community in that we have control, we own the land around that interchange. And it also pointed out just the significant value of that parcel of land. At the time, the community felt it would be inappropriate to develop that parcel, and I'm not talking about this parcel that this applicant is asking for specifically, but I'm talking about all four quadrants of the area surrounding that interchange. And they identify, so the community felt it would be inappropriate to move forward with developing that land at that time. And I agree with that, and I think it would be inappropriate to develop the land even at this time, but at such a point in the future, I think that's quite a valuable piece of land for the community. My personal opinion is that a solar lease at this moment in that particular area would be inappropriate. It would be tying the community's hands and maybe eliminating a potential future use that might be more consistent with the community's desire for development at that time. Perhaps there are other locations, maybe across the old US 95 alignment, that would be a better fit. There is quite a lot of solar development at this point in this area, and my opinion would be that this is not an appropriate use. Just my opinion. Commissioners, I bring it back to you. Mr. DeTeresa.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the chairman is referring to the G.C. Garcia study. And the G.C. Garcia study itself said that development, the Hoover Dam Gateway Center, was not economically feasible. And it was widely panned by the residents. Big opposition that probably cost a lot of people on the former city council their positions. So I don't see why we should consider the G.C. Garcia report in making this decision at all. You know, the people the proponents of the Hoover Dam Gateway Center never expounded on how they were going to get around the controlled growth ordinance. Was going to be some kind of commercial lease scheme. The whole thing, I think, just was not feasible. So I'm not going to weigh that at all in my decision tonight. Thank you.
Fair enough. Anyone else? Will I bring it back to you for a motion? Mr. DeTeresa.
Yes, I'll move that we approve. What is the number? Resolution 1202. Yes, resolution number 1202 in its entirety.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any?
Is that with staff conditions?
The resolution contains, there are no conditions in the resolution, it's only a recommendation.
Okay.
Let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
So that's
Nay.
5-2. Okay.
Thank you. The motion is approved. So this brings us to the item that on your agendas will show up as number 2, and this is possible action for CU 21-269, Resolution 1200 for Allison Schaefer at the location of 682 Wells Road, and this is a public hearing on an application for conditional use permit in the commercial manufacturing zone to allow the boarding of dogs and cats pursuant to city code.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant would like to operate a pet daycare and overnight boarding facility for dogs and cats at this location. The pending business is Dam Doghouse, and she's got a pending lease with the property owner on this property on Wells Road. Pet boarding and kennels are only allowed in the city's commercial manufacturing zone as a conditional use. There is one other pet boarding facility currently in the CM zone, and that's on Canyon Road, and the city has had no complaints for about the 10 years that our code enforcement officer was able to research records back for that. The staff report covers background information about the request, The surrounding land uses are of a light industrial and storage nature on the west side of the road, with a city underground reservoir facility and an RV park on the east side of the road. Most of the on-site parking area that is behind an existing fence and gate will be used as the outdoor play area for the dogs. And per the applicant, all activities, both indoors and outdoors, are going to be monitored. And the dogs, of course, will be kept indoors at night. And her information provides extra details about the monitoring, both in person during the daytime as well as remotely in the evening. And one email was submitted that's in the packet with an objection noted about concerns for noise or odor. A second email was provided, copied to you this, at the dais, and was emailed to you earlier. That one also expressed the same concerns, but the applicant was able to get in touch with that person and have a conversation, and he has since rescinded his withdrawal. And I'm sure the applicant would be happy to answer your questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing, Mr. Lassoff?
I'm just going to take this opportunity. Michael and I have already talked about this, the global land use table, and I know he's working on it and swamped. But I may have missed it. I don't see where there's any other zoning by right for boarding animals.
There's not.
That's what I thought.
The staff report notes that it's only allowed in the CM zone as a conditional use.
I read that part and I didn't see anything that said it wasn't allowed by right anywhere else. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Marvin?
I had a question, I guess, when I looked at the drawing, and also looked at the property there. What's the actual square footage of this?
I didn't check, but perhaps the applicant can answer that question.
Do I go up?
Yes, please come up to the podium. And introduce yourself.
My name is Allison Schaefer. I'm the applicant. So you had a question about square footage.
Yes, of this, yes.
Per the realtor, that particular area is 3,800 square feet in the warehouse space and 1,800 square feet in the office area. So it's a combined amount from that for the indoor space.
Okay, so it goes all the way to the back where the big garage areas are?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was a little bit confused about, so. And I might have another question for you too. The playground area is basically asphalt, so is that going to stay that way?
No, we'll be putting in turf, artificial turf.
Okay. And the pending lease, I assume that's just contingent on getting approval?
Yes.
Because I see there's still a for sale sign on the property, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Until this portion has been approved, we are not comfortable moving forward with a lease. But there is a pending one, and we did have the realtor and the current owner help us fill out the paperwork for the application. So they are well aware how excited we are about this.
And that upstairs apartment, is that part of the?
We're working on negotiating that into the lease because we would like to offer on-site staff 24 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for the applicant? None? All right. Well, I guess, I'm not sure we really officially ended the staff report, did we?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you've got more questions of staff or the applicant, and if not, you can open the public hearing.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question for staff, and it has to do with the part where it says that the number 5 on page 16, the essential public facilities and so on, that doesn't apply because that's also taken place beforehand on that facility. So
I'm sorry, what page did you say?
page 16, it's on the number 5 on the,
I'm sorry, page 16 is the site plan?
oh, I've got the wrong page here, I'm sorry. Anyhow, under the staff comments, where you had gone through the surrounding land and the building and all of that, number 5 was the one that said that it'll be served by adequate essential public facilities and so on. And then the comment was that those aren't really applicable because that's already been addressed when the building was built. Okay, so my question is there a requirement for the public within the building as far as like a restroom in that or not?
The building does have a restroom. I don't know what the business license code or the health district requires in terms of the public being able to use a restroom. Is that what you're questioning?
Yeah, because it is a public business, so people.
Well, I presume, like I said, that's not a zoning issue, so I can't pretend to be an expert in that, but I would imagine any business that is open to the public, I can't answer as to whether or not they have to make their restroom available to customers or not. Normally, that's what retail businesses do, and, service businesses, like, like restaurants and things like that. But if you're just dropping off a dog or a cat, I suppose it's up to the tenant, if you're in a desperate emergency, to use the bathroom, if they let you do that or not. But again, that is not a planning commission or zoning matter, and so I apologize for not knowing that level of detail.
All right.
All right, 1 second, let's see. Any other questions, Mr. Marvin?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bonaire?
May I ask a question of the applicant at this time?
Yes.
In the use, what you list as a use, it says boarding. Do you plan to do any grooming there?
Yes, it will absolutely be on our list. There are 2 restrooms in the location right now, and one of them we are hoping to be able to offer basic baths, and I don't know how many of you are animal owners, but they do get pretty dirty when, even when there's no dirt. So we're hoping to eventually get to a point where perhaps a groomer could come in on a contractual basis and use our facility. But as of right now, I don't have anyone lined up. We would probably use one of the bathrooms to bathe the dogs, like right before they go home, after, so that they smell nice.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. There's showers in both, one in a bathroom that, I guess there's 2 bathrooms in the facility. That's where you would intend to do the grooming?
Yes. We would like to be able to have a contractor come in and perhaps outfit it a bit better for the safety of the animals, because we don't want them running around, especially wet, on the floors. So we would probably have something like a walk-in shower put in, or a proper bathing unit for the dogs.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter, please step to the podium in an orderly manner, and those wishing to be heard, those who are online streaming and wish to provide a comment, again, the number is 702-589-9629. If anyone in the audience here would like to be heard, this is a great time to step up. Hearing no comments, I'll close the public hearing portion of this meeting and bring it back to City Council. I'm sorry, Planning Commission. No. Thank you. Anyway, I'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for a discussion or a motion. Anyone want to be heard on this?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further discussion, I'll move for approval of the conditional use permit.
Very good. Very good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay? No, I'm just helping us understand the word to use. Maybe I'd better quit doing that. All right. Congratulations. That brings us to item currently listed as number 3 on the agenda, and this is for possible action. St. Jude's Ranch for Children's Resolution number 1201, 100 St. Jude Street. It's a recommendation to the City Council on a proposed amendment to the approved St. Jude Ranch Master Plan. This is for revision to the location of proposed structures and facilities. Though this is not listed as a public hearing, I will open it after staff and the applicant have an opportunity to speak. I'll open it for public comments at that time. Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. St. Jude's occupies an approximate 39-acre site. Per provisions of the original land sale agreement from the city, development of vacant portions of the property is subject to review by the Planning Commission and City Council. The most recent St. Jude's Master Plan update was recommended by the Planning Commission in December 2019 and approved by the City Council in January 2020. The focus of that particular update was for the development of the northeasterly 10 vacant acres for their proposed healing center campus, which I'll go over briefly. This latest update is for 1, a revision to the layout for the healing center campus, and 2, revisions to the proposed future facilities for the remaining or existing 29-acre portion of the campus. As per the information presented last year for the healing center, that's going to have basically 6 residential buildings for the clients, or I guess or students, those who will be served by the facility, as well as the additional facilities that are shown on your plans related to that. Basically, just the orientation of those buildings is being changed on this master plan. I should note that, like last time, St. Jude's also did their own outreach to surrounding neighbors and offered a couple of information sessions before this meeting. while the focus of that last master plan about a year ago was for the 10-acre Healing Center campus, a condition of that approval was that St. Jude's provide an updated site plan for the remainder of the campus, as the last overall site plan that we had was from 1997. So what you've got before you tonight in your packet and the 11 by 17 handouts is the master plan from the 1997 for the entire campus, the new master plan, which is on the screen now for the entire campus, and then also the master plan from a year ago, which was just for the Healing Center portion. So you could, I'm sure you compared those before you got to the meeting. Regarding the proposed Healing Center campus, as I noted, this latest version of the plan shows a reorientation of the proposed buildings. And due to concerns raised by some of the neighbors at the meetings a year ago, a condition was added to Council Resolution 7053 at the time that none of the new buildings should be located closer to the property lines than shown on that plan a year ago. The current version of the plan does show some of the buildings somewhat closer. The closest Healing Center buildings are now shown as setback from 70 feet to 105 feet to the northwest and northeast boundaries, as opposed to the 135 to 145 foot setback shown previously. However, the actual distance to the nearest homes will be much greater due to existing easements in the area for the utility transmission corridors, and in one case also a roadway. The closest Healing Center buildings will be approximately 230 feet from the closest homes to the northwest, which is the Bella Vista subdivision, and approximately 205 feet to the closest homes to the northeast, which is the Blue Lake subdivision. The attached resolution contains an updated condition stipulating that the building setbacks will not be closer than shown on the current plan, if that is the Commission's desire. As for the existing campus, a comparison of the 1997 versus the 2021 plan shows essentially the same types of uses, future homes, the cottages, the group homes, service buildings and recreational facilities, but with those facilities in somewhat different locations. There's still a condition added to the resolution that the buildings be one-story, which is how they're proposed. You've also got in your packet a petition signed by owners of 8 lots in the adjacent Blue Lake subdivision, as they had concerns about the grading for the proposed Healing Center, which would be closest to them, the existing block wall, and also requesting more trees as a buffer. And regarding grades, there was a graphic provided in the packet that showed one cross-section view that made it appear that a building pad was being raised 16 feet above existing grade. I'll leave it for St. Jude's representatives to better describe grading. But after the packet was published, they provided additional handouts which you have before you and which are on the screen now, and I'll let them explain those view perspectives. But what they appear to be showing is views of the Healing Center area as from 3 different spots in the Blue Lake subdivision. I'm just not certain as to what is photographed versus photoshopped, existing versus proposed, etc. So I'll let St. Jude's explain that. You've got a lot of backup material attached to this report, so I'll end my summary here and be available for questions, and the applicants are present as well.
Do we have any questions for staff? Mr. Lassoff.
Susan, you'd mentioned, is it 205 feet? I'm looking for those numbers, but...
Page 24, second paragraph.
Thanks. I didn't see any diagram from the architect or anything showing 205 feet, or matter of fact, I didn't see any actual diagram showing any feet anywhere.
Right, what you have is a reduced version of the plan. The actual size of the drawings are 24 by 36, as I recall, so I had printed out a full-size scaled copy of the plan in order to measure the closest setbacks. And again, basically, those setbacks are to the one building in that corner that is closest to those property lines. And then there's an end note on page 26 of the report that mentions the widths of the easements in the area, which is why. So to the northwest, in terms of the setback from the closest corner is 70 feet, but when you add 100 feet for the for the transmission line corridor, which can't be built in, plus the 60-foot road right-of-way for Valencia Drive, that's where you get your number of 230. And then to the northeast, where the setback is 105 feet, you add a 100-foot transmission line easement that exists on the west part of Blue Lake there, and that's where you get your 205 feet to the closest homes in Blue Lake.
I would question those numbers in that when you drive down Blue Lake, though, that transmission pole runs directly down that street. And so I would think only 50 feet of that easement is going to be encroaching into the into St. Jude's property. The other 50 feet is going to go the other way. Those lines
No, I believe that easement is entirely on the Blue Lake subdivision. I pulled up subdivision maps. I can certainly check afterwards, but I don't think it's,
this is why it would be a really good idea for us to have a map with dimensions on it, is all I was getting at. Because
well, I can certainly verify before this goes to council, and we can certainly ask the applicant to provide their setback information on the plans.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Rudd?
I have a quick question for staff. So when they go to develop this, if it is approved, all the engineering and all that will be subject to building permits, correct?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. The applicant is in the process of obtaining a lot of grant funds. I know the county has committed I forget how many millions of dollars, and a good portion of the city's future community development block grant is also dedicated towards this project as well. So it will be some time before we reach the construction stage, because obviously they have to go through the approval process, getting various grants. But as you can see from their attachments, they've already got numerous consultants and experts on board to deal with the various aspects of the project.
Mr. Marvin?
For staff, I have a little bit of a question on the setback thing. And the first thing I noticed was in the December planning meeting that I think was a reference to the setbacks there was 135 and 140 feet in those minutes. But what you have is 135 and 145, and I was just wondering what that discrepancy is.
I can't guarantee that the minutes are correct, but I know I worked from my staff report previously for the setbacks, and I would have had printed again off the full-size plan, back in 2019 for that as well.
So then the 140 is correct?
I would say what's in this staff report is the 135 to 145.
Not what's in the December meeting then?
Yeah, I might have not double-checked that for the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, another quick question for staff. Is the setbacks a convenience for the neighbors, or is that something that we're looking at because they have to do it. We would have to vote on a variance if it got any closer than that.
Oh, that's a very good question. I think I may have noted in the staff report, and forgive me if I didn't, but in the R1 zones, basically, the biggest setback there is in terms of a requirement is only 20 feet.
Mr. Marvin?
I've got another question regarding that. You're referencing the 100-foot easements in compiling what those distances are, but that was also true when the setbacks were established before, isn't that correct?
Right, that's,
Yeah, not like there's a big deal there.
no, we pointed out the setbacks only because even though they are still quite large, a couple of the buildings are now closer than what they were on the version from a little more than a year ago. And there was a condition in that resolution at the time that the buildings not be closer. So the applicant will need to address why they've chosen to reorient the buildings to put some of them somewhat closer, even though they will still be quite distant
Okay, so it
from
would
the
be,
nearest homes.
the one setback then is going from 135 to 70, and the other one's going from 145 to 105.
I'm sorry,
Well, the original being 135 and 145, but what's being proposed is 70 and 105?
correct.
So you're going from 135 to 70 on the one, and 145 to 105 on the other.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to setback, why don't we let the applicant discuss that? And Ms. Bonar, question for staff?
Yes, please, thank you. I'm not sure it has to do with decision-making, but I'm just wondering at what point is there an evaluation of the grade out there and the water flow? At what point in their building and design process would the city look at that?
That would be at the construction stage, construction planning stage, when the plans and improvement plans for the development are in review, and that would all happen before building
And
permits.
that's all part of the permitting?
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, would the applicant please step forward and add to this discussion?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, members of the Planning Commission, for having us. My name is Christina Vela, and I am the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. And this evening, I'm here to to present some updated plans and describe the progress of the Healing Center and our master plan. And the Healing Center, of course, being a new project for our for St. Jude's Ranch for Children. I'd like to just provide a brief recap of the Healing Center and the purpose of it. We are committed to serving an underserved population of child victims of sex trafficking in Nevada. This specialized residential program will be one of a kind in Nevada, and quite honestly, one of very few across the entire country. This allows us a great opportunity to do some groundbreaking work in the care of child victims of trafficking. This project will leverage the history of St. Jude's Ranch for Children, which has over 54 years experience providing care to child victims of abuse and trauma. This campus will provide a holistic program that will nurture victimized children with a beautiful built environment, gardens, walking trails, an on-site school, space for yoga and meditation, physical fitness, and many other services that we will offer on campus. Previously, when we came before the commission, we presented a project, and now that plan has been further expanded upon and built out, and in a moment our architect can certainly describe some of those changes. I wanted to share, as previously mentioned by Susan, that the number of buildings will remain exactly the same as previously proposed. So 9 in total, all are one-story buildings as previously discussed. And the campus will be surrounded by beautiful and desert-appropriate landscaping. Additionally, since I last presented to the commission, we've onboarded new partners that we're really excited to have. Grand Canyon Development Partners, that's acting as our construction managers and our construction management of our project. And then EV&A, or Advance and Associates, is our architect, and Tanny Engineering is acting as our civil engineer. As previously mentioned, we've hosted, back in 2019, we hosted 2 community neighborhood meetings. And in April of 2021, so just last month, in order to share with our neighbors our updated plans, we hosted 2 additional meetings where we showed a virtual tour of the Healing Center through great work of our architects, so people could indeed envision what it would look like to be at the Healing Center. And we continued to solicit feedback about how we can be a good neighbor. And, of course, those negotiations and questions about what the campus might look like for our neighbors. In closing, St. Jude's Ranch for Children is incredibly, and our Board of Trustees is incredibly committed to being a good neighbor and making Boulder City proud for the services that we've been offering for all of these years. So now I'd like to welcome Ed Vance, our architect, to talk through the plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Vance with EV&A Architects in Las Vegas, 1160 North Town Center Drive. Area code, or zip code is 89144. I'm here to answer any questions you have, but I've been listening to all your comments and concerns about setbacks, view corridors, and the original design of the plan versus what we have today. And so if I could, I think we've got the masterful wizard back there. If they could put up the kind of, it's the master plan of, there you go, of the entire map. And you're all seeing this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have a laser pointer. You do? Wow, you're really good. And I must say that Christina mentioned that, and do I need to talk into this microphone so you can hear me better?
Yeah.
And I'll try to lean then. The neighbors to our north really, sorry? You are fantastic.
It's the arrow that's rubbed off on the right here.
There you go. Oh, that's really great. And then there's a laser? But it only works on people. Okay. Not on TVs. That's all right. That's okay. This is really fantastic. So as you can see, the master plan really kind of finalizes the overall plan for the entire ranch, which includes more than the Healing Center. So our job was to kind of say, look, what are we doing here over time when we're all sort of not here anymore? What will the ranch ownership take? Where will they take the ranch and its ultimate users? One of the things we decided to do is to show along that northern edge where we're going to put all the sporting events. And I'll tell you what, our northern neighbors were really happy about that because there's no buildings there. And so that was met with a great deal of positivity. Toward the center of the project, that's where we're going to put our educational facility in the future, a new school, which will have an amphitheater and a place to gather for not just our guests, but anyone in the city. That could be one of the nice gathering areas that you can have. And beyond that, we're going to have some maintenance facilities off to what would be the northwest. But as we move toward the 10 acres for the Healing Center, we discovered, as we looked at the original plan provided to you, which is giving you all the original dimensions that they had before, what we discovered was that it didn't meet ADA requirements or the fire department's requirements. So as an architect, you have to sort of leverage or maintain all of those code requirements as well as the needs of the client, plus the grade fall. So the site, as you go across this, I'm going to move this forward here. There's over 100 feet of fall on this site. And naturally, if you have a few engineers in this crowd, and I'm thinking you're one, and you may be one as well. So you understand that when you've got a site like that, one of your mandates is make sure you balance the site, plus maintain ADA requirements. So this thing has to meet code, it has to balance, and it has to make sense. Now, one of the things we decided to do in concept, if you look at this master plan, you're going to see the residences all face inward. All the patios don't look outward, they look inward to an inner sort of sanctum, if you will. And the concept there is that all the kids are looking inside to the therapy garden. It's actually set up like a North Star for them, a compass, which gives them direction. So instead of having this thing just laid out it was rather chaotic before. The fire department couldn't get around. There was no way to get in and out of these buildings. Roads crossed paths. Kids could be hurt by crossing, roads. The outside of this plan now is all the service vehicles coming from the outside and all the kids are on the inside. So safety was a big issue. So what that did is it forced us to push the buildings out just a smidgen on that west side. Now, naturally, I live in a house. I don't like neighbors moving in too close. But as Susan pointed out, I have never had a setback. I've never offered a setback more than what's required. Sometimes I do, but 70, 80, 100, and 150, now nearly 200 to the nearest homes. That's pretty good. But we still want to make sure our neighbors feel comfortable with those view corridors. So one of the things that we've done is we've dropped the site in the very north, where the tallest building is, which is still one story. We've dropped that 15 feet. We've raised it 15 feet on the middle of the site to balance it and get the ADA requirements met. But what we're doing is we're going to add a little more landscaping on the side that faces our neighbors to the northeast, and we're going to repair that wall, and we're not going to wait for it. We're going to do it right away. And we have the opportunity to raise that wall if we have to. And so what we did is we went out there, and Susan, you're absolutely right. We had to sort of sift through actual photographs. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had this technology when I was younger, because Google Earth is amazing. So we can actually get right down to it with the topography, and we can see exactly what you're going to see. And with the landscaping shown here, this is the northern part of the site at the very highest. You can see a few of the buildings, but with the landscaping there, it's going to be very difficult to see any of the homes. By the way, the homes look pretty nice. If you've looked at the images of the elevations, these are not unattractive buildings. These are all very good-looking buildings. This is in the middle of the site from a backyard. You will see the corner of a building, but as I mentioned, all of our windows face inward to the courtyard, so nobody can see out. So it's really well designed to make sure that no one is looking into your backyard, but granted, you're 200 feet away, so you need a pair of binoculars to see anything. Second of all, on the lower part of the site, I doubt if you'll see anything. Here's the benefit of all of this. No mountain views will be obstructed. None. From the northern side and the northwest side, they were worried about obstructions to the lake. That won't occur either. We've checked all of the views. The site is actually dropping for them, and although we've raised it a little bit on this one side, the view back toward us is, I think it's minimal. So, and we tried to do this so that we don't have an issue with our neighbors really looking at something ugly. And I wouldn't want that either. So, you had a great question. Can I answer that one? Relative to civil, Ed Tanny has already been working with Public Works. We know we're going to have some retention at the southern end, or the sort of northeast, sort of actually it's south, part of the site, because all the water's running that direction. And so we know we've got some issues there, but we're ahead of it, and Ed's one of the best civil engineers I've worked with in the last 30 years being here. So if you have any other questions, and we'll have all those drainage reports off to Public Works for the review. Okay? So I'll open it up. If you have any other questions, I'm here to answer them.
So questions for the applicant? Beth? Okay. Mr. Bielski.
Yeah, just a couple simple questions. I noticed in the latest drawing that came through, there's an inner wall as well as, of course, the main wall that already exists, and as you've explained, you're going to repair the outer wall. Some of the photos show the inner wall as a open fence, and then some of them show it as looks like a solid wall.
Yes, well, the outer wall is existing. That's a CMU wall on the very outside of the campus. That's always been there.
I'm not talking about the stuccoed wall. I think the outer wall for the campus overall is a stucco wall, is it not?
Well, it's stucco over CMU.
But what I'm looking at is in the one diagram
That's somebody's backyard.
Okay, so well, then you clarified what I was.
Right away.
Because I was trying to understand
That's
if
right.
that in fact was that inner wall,
Right.
which was different.
That's somebody else's wall, and we kind of got in their backyard and said, here's what you're gonna see.
Okay.
Right.
Great, okay, thank you. The only,
We're trying to do our
the other
homework.
question I had is obviously there are some trees that you're gonna put in
Yes.
between. Is the intent to put in, mature or, really small trees?
Great question. See, so one of the things we're having to deal with is trees that don't get too tall so that I block their view of the mountains up to the north. So we want to block any residences and view corridors that they have. But we don't want to have, these monumental, so we have Stan Southwick's one of the best landscape architects in town.
So there's no intent to just put a bunch of
No.
palm trees that grow up in the
No
air
palm
like
trees.
toothpicks?
No.
You're gonna use,
No, we're trying to keep our trees low enough to
mesquites
cover the
or
houses,
something that's relatively
but
low.
not obscure the sky.
Okay.
That's right. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Marvin?
The original, sightline drawing that we got, really isn't very accurate.
No, that's why we went to the trouble of doing this, because that's
Yeah.
static at one point. And actually, we've lowered it another foot. We've worked with our civil engineer. We just had a meeting with them last week.
And then the latest, images that you sent over, the one that has the most exposure, I think, it would be the house that's at the corner of Blue Lake Court in
Right,
Blue Lake.
the middle one.
That one on the north.
That's
be
correct.
On the northwest corner.
Yeah, you'll see the corner of a house right there.
Right,
That's about
Okay.
it.
okay. But you made one comment about raising the wall if you have to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because there's some repair that needs to be done almost immediately, but we're not sure if that really needs to
Yeah.
be done.
Basically, like all residential zones, the maximum wall height is 6 feet.
Oh.
St. Jude's got variances years ago for those extra tall gated entries along the highway. So if they want to raise the wall height over 6 feet, they'll need to ask for a variance.
We're wondering though, if that extra foot or two that we'd add, which would obviously not comply with the code, it doesn't really change anything. You'd still see what we see. We looked at that already.
Okay.
But our fence on the inside will be 8 foot, because I don't want anybody jumping that. You know what I mean? So
Right.
from a security standpoint, we're covering all of our bases.
And from a scale standpoint on the one site drawing, that wire fence is how far in from the,
Ornamental, it varies. So we have a meandering pathway. Oh, could I get you to do that, Matt? There you go. It's hard to tell, but there's a meandering pathway that goes all around the outboard of the site. And that meandering pathway, the fence that will follow that. Okay, enough to have some vegetation on both sides. But if someone were to get in there, we want to be able to see them. So we'll have security cameras all around. That make sense? These are great questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just
Yes, Mr. Lightsoft.
going to touch on the setbacks. Are we confident that there aren't going to be any buildings within 200 feet of these of the other existing privately owned property lines?
We're set. We're not moving these again. Trust me.
Okay.
We're good.
Ms. Bonner?
There was mention that you talked to the neighbors. What was the general feedback? I know that originally some of them had some concerns. Where are we with the neighbors on this from your perspective?
Well, we appreciate our neighbors' perspective and their concerns, and so these last two meetings that we held in April of 2021 were much less attended as in the year past. The individuals that did come brought a picture of, for example, the existing wall, and I was not aware of some of the like the cracks in the wall, and so that was very helpful that they shared their perspective. I hadn't driven by that part for some time. And so we talked about, we want to continue to enhance their site. And so we certainly would update or, upgrade that fence as quickly as possible for short-term fix, and then continue to evaluate long-term if there's any additional changes that we need to make. Other than that, there was a lot of questions. There were some questions about the cactus and things like that we had originally had in our virtual video. But overall, the individuals, hopefully, that came felt listened to and heard. And we have taken a lot of care to address their concerns. I'm really grateful to Advance and his team with being able to use technology to look at different images and from different viewpoints, hopefully in order to help our neighbors understand that we hear them, and we are working very diligently to make that site be, nice. And I mean, I would think it's better than what it looks like now. It's a big dirt lot with tumbleweeds, and the coyotes visit quite frequently. But that's my sense of those last two April meetings.
So you said that you hoped they had a sense that you heard them. What was it that you heard? What was the chief complaint or concern that they had? What was it that you heard that was?
Mostly about the fence, and Ed was present also, so I'll let Ed answer from his perspective. Mostly about the existing wall and needing some repair there. There was some questions about landscaping, or if there could be any ornamental artwork. The mayor was present, as well as acting city manager Michael Mays, and we talked about whether there could be any decorative anything added. It's not something that's currently within our budget, but we definitely thought about that. That was really the main concern. At that point, there wasn't quite the concern about the grading and the angles that they would see from their house, but we heard enough about their concern of what it would look like from their houses. Certainly, they have beautiful homes, and we love Boulder City for all of the views, and so it is our intent to not obstruct anybody's views of whichever angle, the mountain, the lake, as much as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Biaski.
One further question. Maybe it's here and I'm just not seeing it, but is there intent to have any kind of street lighting around the buildings or on the streets that go around the buildings?
And I'm not sure about street lighting, but certainly we'd have some. We're going to have some lighting along those streets. Nothing tall, though, because we just want security met. We don't want to see a lot of lights shining on our neighbors. We want to be a good neighbor. So anything on the road so that you can see it. Everyone needs to understand these kids aren't driving, so there's no cars much. The only cars are vehicle traffic that you're going to see there, any service vehicles that show up during the middle of the day. And then and then the staff members, the house parents.
But from a security standpoint,
that's about
if
it.
nothing else, you're going to have some.
We'll have some landscape lighting in there.
Will there be anything along the pathway?
Right, some along the pathway, yes.
And if I can add, our current part of the campus where we have foster homes currently, and we do utilize lighting, and a lot of it is motion detected or motion censored. So we have some existing lights, of course, for safety and security as people are walking in the evening, but some are triggered certainly by motion just as an energy saving approach. And my guess is we will use some similar style for the Healing Center.
Yeah, I would add that as we're moving through this, knowing what we have in front of us from a neighbor standpoint, we will always be cognizant that all lighting be directed inward and not outward.
Probably my main concern is I look at Hemingway, the park, and I look at the baseball day thing. It's kind of atrocious, although it's a very beneficial thing.
I got the same thing in my neighborhood. I know what you're saying. I don't think we'll have any nighttime.
Are you going to have major lights around the ball diamond?
We haven't even planned on that, no. In fact, I doubt if we'll have any nighttime activities. It'll all be daytime.
So probably not.
Yeah, this is not Little League.
Okay.
It's only for the kids that are living there.
Right.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Marvin?
When is the whole project scheduled to be completed?
The whole project?
The whole thing?
Oh, boy, that'd be, if I knew that, I would have a great
Do they
crystal
have
ball, so I don't
Yes,
know.
10 years?
You'd be best to answer that.
Well, we do have, I mean, assuming the permitting process and all, you know, the things that need to happen, it would be overly ambitious to say that we will break ground this year. But if we're not able to, then it would be in the spring of, or quarter 1, quarter 2 of 2022. And from our construction experts have told us that it's about a 12-month construction. So we feel pretty confident that we could potentially open maybe in Q3 or Q4 of 2024. We've secured enough funding, as Susan mentioned. We've received $3 million community development grant from Clark County and other generous donors, private, corporate. Caesars Entertainment recently committed $1 million. So we're incredibly grateful for the funding that we've secured. And so we have enough funding to certainly move the project forward. So as soon as we can get through, of course, all of the process that's required with new construction, then we would be able to break ground. And then, as I mentioned, a 12-month construction, give or take, I guess, what happens on construction projects, that there's all these unforeseen things that are likely to happen.
But overall, I think Thomas's question is, when you do a great project for the Healing Center, which is what she was referring to,
Right.
sometimes that sets, the wheels in motion, where capital campaigns then can beget those other phases of the work. Now we have a master plan to go forward. If I were to guess 10 years, I think that would be very optimistic, maybe 15. If all went well. And nothing would make us happier to see it all done.
Clarify, I'm not sure I recognize that. So you're thinking this is in phases. What phase what would be the first phase?
Okay, let me clarify. I might have confused your question. What we're working on currently, so the capital campaign and all of the project development is about the 10 acres for the Healing Center. The full master plan is conceptual in nature. It's simply conceptual. We have no funding allocated or dedicated for any of the expansion of the existing campus. That would come back to you all for approval once we had funding secured. The plan simply was, of course, an obligation to Boulder City of how we intend to use the land in the future. And it was also our commitment to give some order to how the campus is developed for the future, if in fact future developments are necessary or needed. And so, does that help clarify? Okay, perfect, thank you.
We have a question from Ms. Bonaire.
You mentioned CDBG funding. When did the clock start ticking on that?
We were just awarded in this past round in March of, well, actually, I guess it was March of, COVID really threw me for a loop. It was last March, this most recent tranche of CDBG money. We have not entered into agreement with them yet. It's still through the agreement processes, but it was in the most recent Clark County CDBG grant announcements.
So you haven't received the grant award yet?
We did receive the grant award. I just not have signed. We're waiting for the official agreements to sign.
Okay.
But we were awarded the $3 million.
And that's a 5-year start to finish on the project then?
Yes, that's accurate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just Mr. Marvin?
One quick question. There's basically 9 buildings in this phase. Yeah, 6 classroom, or 6 residences, and then it was a school and library, or, yeah.
There's a therapy building
yeah.
and then the intake.
Yeah, there is 9 buildings, 6 homes, 1 multi-purpose building that has an on-site school, a yoga and meditation space, physical fitness, library, classrooms. That's in the largest of the buildings, a therapy building, and then an administration building. So 9 buildings in total.
Very good. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time this evening. We appreciate the presentation and the information.
Thank you very much.
While this is not a public hearing, I would like to provide an opportunity for those in the audience and on the phone who would like to be heard on this matter to speak up, to come up and provide comments. Please state your name.
My name's Lonzo James. I live at 681 Blue Lake Court. I'd like to start out by saying council had originally approved buildings for St. Jude's, and we had previous meetings about that, and we were told that the buildings were going to be below existing levels. And so when we got a notice of a meeting a few weeks ago, we just assumed it was further developed plans on the original plan. So it wasn't really heavily attended. When we got to the meeting, the only thing we were shown was a virtual tour of the campus. There was nothing in that meeting that showed us any other drawing. It was just a video. My colleague, Mr. Gerard here, asked for a site section map from the architect, and it was emailed to us. That was the first time that anyone in our development had learned that the development was going to be 16 feet above existing. Now, 16 feet above, if you can put up the drawing that showed the site section.
I'm sorry, I did not make a PowerPoint slide for that, but the members all do have that.
Well, you had it up a while ago. Anyway, the site section is shown from 680 Blue Lake Court, and it's like from the RV access. Now, no one lives in an RV access, and it showed the best possible view that you could have, and yes, it's in the middle of the development. The problem is, that's like putting a 3-story building next door to you. You add 16 feet of earth and then a single-story building on it. That's like a 3-story building right next door to you. We're not happy with that. So my colleague and I drew up some recommendations that we asked St. Jude's to adopt, and that's part of the agenda also. During the meeting, I asked the CEO, I said, will you commit to repairing that wall at the beginning of the project? Because many times projects run out of money and then they're already approved, there's nothing you can do about it. She would not commit to it at that time. Since then, because we had so little information, I went around and explained to the homeowners what was happening, and so there are more concerns now. The best I could do is I would ask the commission to table this until they meet with us and give us more assurances that our concerns are met. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm shorter than he is. My name's Robert Gerard. I reside at 694 Magic Cove Court in the Blue Lake subdivision. And both Mac and I have been on our board of directors, and I was the past president in the last session. But we're not speaking as a board here. The board is elected to let the individual owners represent themselves if they would. And so we had a cutoff date to staff submittal for package. We now have 16 owners of 20 that have signed this little letter. That's just the way it went. We had a cutoff date. In 2019, when we went to the first hearing, we were told, actually 2 hearings or 2 town hall meetings of sharings, that the minimum separation would be 150 feet to our dividing wall between our 2 properties. Now that, we may call that a transmission line corridor, but that's actually common open area for us, and it is maintained and is part of our open space. We were also told that the project would follow grade and step downhill. Now, I'm a real estate developer and I understand ADA and fire department, and so I'm not arguing. But We've got a 16-foot cut and fill, which will be thousands and thousands of yards of grading. You have to pre-compact the area you are going to fill. You have to over-X the other. We're going to be living with dust and dirt. So all we are asking is one of our agreements with the applicant is that they consider alternate grading proposals to try and mitigate what we view as excessive elevation gain in order to get a flat site. And in that, as they've already discussed tonight, this is the first we've ever heard about detention. We've had significant drainage damage along our shared property line in the past. So I can guarantee you're going to have a detention basin when they get the cube, when they figure out the volumes, or we're going to lose those walls. So we just ask that they consider grading alternatives. We're not dictating. We're just suggesting that rather than shove the buildings up 16 feet, maybe they could follow grade. And in that, we need to realize that it's just not the buildings. There's outdoor activities that go with a building, including a walkway that, as you can see from the drawing, is located immediately adjacent to our property. So we would ask that that might be a consideration. We're not dictating. We're not complaining about the use. We're simply saying we were told 150 feet. That's disappeared. We were told follow grade. That's disappeared. And we have had no time to visit with them in a community forum. Tonight's actually the first chance we've had to visit about this. Now the architect was kind enough to send me the cut section, and that's when we first saw this. So there you go on that point. I believe they're of goodwill and they will repair the wall. That needs to be an ongoing situation because all those walls are gaining defects as time goes on. We have all kinds of movement in that area from various reasons. So we'd hope they maintain it, do it first, not second. And then lastly, we have a line of trees on our side. We are merely asking that in an appropriate location on their side of the wall, that they build a matching row of trees that will develop a significant canopy and enough height that they will help to mitigate the view lines we have basically at the foundations of their buildings and all the way up. And I'd like to mention that the large single-story building is actually a two-story building if you look at the cross sections. It's a massive structure, one story in use, but two-story in structure. We're not objecting, we're just saying, hey, it adds up. It all gets there. So 3 things we're asking. Consider your grading proposal. It's nowhere near what was shown us. It's completely different. Second, agree to repair the wall, and the sooner the better. And thirdly, consider planting a tree row for us so that we eventually will have some visual, some auditory, some sightline break, something to break up the profile of these buildings. And so that's the 3 things that the 16 individual owners are asking, and we just felt better not to bring everybody down here and take commission and staff's time, which we appreciate, to share these things. So, might I ask if you have any questions, because I'm probably the only one left to talk.
I don't think we're allowed to ask questions during the public comment
Well, I'll
period.
ask myself a question, all right? I think given some time, we can resolve everything with St. Jude, but the process has not allowed us the time. So if it would be possible for us to gain that opportunity, great. We intend to go to the council meeting. I will tell you that we'll make another show up, but we would rather go in unity with the project. That would be our preference. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff. Is there a height restriction on that side of the highway? I know on the other side of the highway, there's a 20-foot height restriction to any new buildings being built. Is there a height restriction?
If you're referring to CC&Rs, the city has no involvement whatsoever with private CC&Rs. The city's code for nearly every zone is maximum 2 stories, 25 feet.
Okay, so there's no CC&Rs?
No, I'm certain that Blue Lake and Bella Vista have CC&Rs, but as I said, the city has no involvement with private CC&Rs.
Okay, thank you.
Susan, I'm wondering whether or not the applicant could be given another opportunity to speak.
You might want to ask if there's any additional public comment and then
Right.
bring the applicant back up.
following staff's recommendation, is there any additional public comment? And once again, I offer public comment to those who might be live streaming, and I think I've mentioned the number often enough. Seeing no additional public comments within the audience, I would like to provide the applicant another opportunity to come up and address if they would like to. Is that a positive? All right, please step forward.
Thank you. I'd like to provide some additional comments about our April 2021 neighborhood meetings. Again, my name is Christina Vella. I'm the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. As we did in the 2019 neighborhood meetings, a flyer was sent to the closest, I think it was 500 or 1,000 households closest to us. We used the exact same mailing list that we did in 2019 for the 2021 neighborhood meeting. The flyer indicated that we'd like to share some updates about the progress of our project. And at the meeting in April of 2021, we had a couple materials handy. One was a big, I don't know how big that size of board is. I don't know where, how big? 30 by 42 foam core board that had the master plan that also included the healing center. We had the kind of size, I don't know the sizes very well, that Susan has handy on her desk. That particular size, 11 by 17, I would think that is. Also available that we put on the tables for individuals. And we talked through the changes that we were proposing, and then also showed a 3.5-minute virtual video, and then spent time talking through that. We were very open to the questions about additional views, and that was our architect emailing our neighbors that had questions about specific angles. And as I previously mentioned, because of the concerns, I did receive a copy of the letter from the neighbors and their concerns, those 3 specific concerns. And that is really the work of our civil engineer and our architect spending time thinking about the site, the grading, and the views. And so all of the additional images that were provided today, although those are newer images because those were done in response to our neighbors' concerns, I feel quite honestly that at the April meetings we provided as much information as we had available. Of course, this is a project in development, so we've moved from schematic design. Certainly in 2019, it was still just a master plan conceptual. The work that we've done over the last year is to move through schematic design and reorient the project, as Ed Vance mentioned, so that it had more order and that it would meet the code requirements for the city of Boulder City for fire department and other kinds of visitors that would come to the campus. And certainly now as we move into the next stage on design development, the plan will continue to evolve. However, as Ed mentioned, the positioning of the buildings, although we recognize are a bit different in the setbacks from what was discussed in 2019, is required so that we can meet the requirements of all the permits and the city's code. And so we feel comfortable at this point that no additional changes will be made. And our civil engineer already being part of the team, we feel confident that he's been able to assess that entire site to give us a good plan to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Vance, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, with your permission. Look, in the interest of détente, I have no problem. I mean, this guy's, he's a developer, so I work with these guys all the time. Are you willing to come meet with my civil engineer and talk about alternate grading plans? Because I've been going through every curb cut to maximize this thing, to make sure that I'm not breaking codes. You understand them, I could feel it. Additional tree lines, no problem. I mean, you mentioned 3 things. The trees, repair the wall, and I think we've committed to do that.
Yes, we did.
I can keep working on trees plantings with my landscape architects. That's not a problem. to drop that one building a little bit, I mean, I could try to get that down a little longer, a little more, but without upsetting the whole apple cart. I mean, you want to come over to my office, we'll meet with the civil engineer, we can work on this. I want to do that with you. I mean, that's the only way this works. Does that make sense? I have donuts, and I have an espresso machine. The other thing is, we can do that between now and city council. What's the date?
June,
So,
I would ask, let me just, I actually would ask if the commission would be willing to approve it with the conditions that we are committing to verbally in order for this to move forward. We do have a lot of moving parts on this project, and so we would ask for your support this evening so that we can continue to move the project forward. And as previously done in the agreement, we will continue these conversations and of course commit to repairing the wall, the trees, and continuing to evaluate what grading options are available.
Ms. Bonaire.
Sue, can we approve this with adding those?
Just a minute, I'm trying to make notes.
I guess my biggest concern is how do we write a conditional clause related to the grade? I mean, we can, it would all just be hearsay, you know what I mean? There's not.
What we would do is actually what we did last time. Last time, you actually approved the resolution as it was drafted, but in your motion, you said, hey, we'd like the buildings not to be closer to the property lines than they are. So then that, staff had time to draft up the wording, and we added that to the council's draft resolution. So tonight, there's not a reason to amend the resolution per se. It'd be difficult for staff to, on the fly, come up with proper wording for that. But in your motion, you can address that as part of your recommendation.
Thank you.
Mr. DeTeresa.
From the conversation I just heard, it sounds to me like there's room for the parties to meet before it goes to council, and hopefully to work all this out. Both sides seem to be very willing and open. My recommendation would be that tonight we approve the resolution, and between now and the time it goes to council, if they're not successful in working out a resolution at the council meeting, these gentlemen and their neighbors can present their side of the story once again.
So, I understand. I'm gonna allow the applicant to be seated, and we'll bring it back to the commission. Thank you very much, and thank you to those in the public who have provided their comments. We appreciate that. It's the only way we can do our job if we understand what the community desires. So bring it back to the Planning Commission. And I'm going to start with a comment. I think, quite frankly, we've got a project. I, of course, was here during the last commission meeting where this was originally brought up. So what we're looking at is a master plan for the St. Jude's Ranch area. There's been a revision to, well, actually it's been now a complete master plan, and that's in essence what we're recommending to council through our actions this evening. I think we've got frankly, a very important project here for the community and for St. Jude's itself. I personally am in favor of seeing this healing center move forward. From what I heard, as Mr. DeTeresa has indicated, is a willingness on the part of the St. Jude's folks to work with the local residents. I think it sounds like they're pretty darn close, all things considered. And so my own recommendation is that we go ahead and approve this with the recommendations provided. So I think, and I'd like to make make a recommendation and a motion, and we can have further discussion following that, following a second, all right? And so I'd make a motion to pass Resolution 1201 as written with the additional consideration that St. Jude staff will meet with local residents prior to the city council meeting at which this will be addressed. And a particular concern is repairing the wall in advance of, I'll say, further construction, consideration of additional landscaping, and consideration of a revised grading plan. Does that motion satisfy does that work for city staff? Is that worded in a way that we can live with?
For a motion, yes.
Thank you. That's my motion. Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Bring it back to the commission for comments. What are your thoughts?
Can we have a discussion on that? Frankly, I have to start out with this is probably one of the best plans, one of the best thought out, one of the best additions we could possibly have for the city. I think there's been, as the applicant has already said, they've put a tremendous amount of effort into it. Most of it up to this point, and what's been approved by the commission council have been largely conceptual. This particular amendment is really addressing the issues of location, setbacks, which have already been conditioned in prior approvals. But we're evaluating at this point with further information, does that present an issue by going to shorter or smaller setbacks? Personally, with the data I've seen, especially the virtual view diagrams, which frankly are probably better accurate than any line drawings you could have, it is a very reasonable thing. And yeah, I think the applicants at Bella Vista should work with the homeowners at Bella Vista or Blue Lake should work with the applicant, perhaps at the size of the trees, which is why I asked the question. Obviously, that is the biggest thing that probably comes into play. If they put 6-foot trees in, you're not going to have necessarily the blockage. They put in reasonable sized trees that grow reasonably quick. Most of what they're shown in that virtual thing takes away the issue of the buildings. And frankly, the locations that are there were well within the original concept plan and look good. So my personal thing is, I believe you can just accept the resolution the way it is. Any further comments will come to council. Council will decide what they really want to do with all the little nuances. That's not our job, I don't think.
Okay. Mr. Marvin.
Yes, I agree completely with that statement.
Just so I can be clear, I think what I heard Mr. Biasi saying is you're in favor of the resolution, but without the additional recommended conditions.
I'm in favor of going with the resolution as stated
and that's
with
it.
the staff conditions. I think the rest is just, they work it out.
Ms. Bonaire.
I'm in favor of it with the conditions that we put on it. They are recommendations to work together. I don't think it stops the applicant from moving forward or delays the project. It's simply us acknowledging the residents and their concerns and giving them time and a little encouragement to work together. So there's no limitations being put on with those conditions. It's a, hey, go ahead and get together and work together is how I took it. So for clarification on that.
And if I could ask city staff, did it come across that way as a recommendation, not as an absolute requirement?
Yes, I mean, what I heard you say, your motion was to approve the resolution, but with an additional recommendation that St. Jude's, well, no, with a recommendation that St. Jude's meet with the neighbors prior to going to the city council to discuss, to consider the repair of the wall prior to all other activities, consider the additional landscaping request, and consider possible grading changes.
Thank you. Additional comments, Mr. Rudd?
So I mean, it's a recommendation. There's no resolve that we're asking for. So it's just basically that if they don't come together and they don't have an agreement, it's still gonna go to city council.
That's correct.
That's the way I would see it. However, from what I'm hearing from both parties, it sounds like there's a strong interest in working together. And I strongly encourage the applicant to do that because you know as well as anyone, they're gonna hear about it at the city council meeting if it doesn't take place. So that's where I sit. Mr. Bielski.
Just as a further rebuttal, the reality is everything that's in the minutes of this meeting are record for city council, and if they chose not to get together, I think it would be in their disinterest to do that. So I'm not sure what we're arguing about. Just the resolution as it stands is a good resolution.
Well, I'm batting 0 tonight. All right. Any further comment?
Well, you have a motion, right?
I have a motion. And we have a second. So at this moment, we'll vote on, well, unless we have further comment. Okay, at this moment, let's vote on the resolution as provided.
With the additional recommendation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry. Yeah, we're gonna do.
Would the folks that are opposed raise their hands again? Mr. Marmon, all right.
You were aye, okay. So it was 6-1 then? Okay.
Very good. All right, the motion as written passes. Thank you all for your time on that issue and for your interest in working together. This brings us to the last item for possible action on the agenda. And, oh, goodness, okay. For possible action, V 2649, and this is Joyce Camille Ariati at 307 Utah Street. This approval of an extension of time for variance per section of per city code. This is not a public hearing. And staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll hold off on us calling the applicant because you may determine that you don't need to speak to her regarding this, but hopefully she'd be available still if you do. As per the staff report, this is a request for extension of a variance. Last October, the Planning Commission approved a variance for this property to allow an addition with a front setback of 15 feet for a portion of the addition, whereas the code requires a minimum setback of 20 feet. And it was conditionally approved with a standard condition that the variance was approved based on the plans as submitted to the Planning Commission. The applicant still intends to do those plans. It's just that, as she's noted, the family came down with a case of COVID, and that put everything on delay. As noted in the report, our current code has a 180-day limit, that if a permit is not obtained within 180 days of a variance, it becomes void. However, the code does have an allowance for an extension, and it states, extensions of time limits may be granted by the Planning Commission upon the showing of good faith and effort by the applicant to comply therewith and failure to so comply by reason of conditions beyond the applicant's control. So if the commission is in favor of extending this request for another 180 days, you would simply pass a motion to do so. If you don't think their reasons satisfy section 1135(8) in terms of the delay being beyond the applicant's control, you'd need to find a finding otherwise. And I should note that since not all of the current commissioners, were present then, this is not a reconsideration of the variance. The sole issue is whether the requested extension should be granted based on section 1135(8) of the city code.
Very good, thank you. Any questions of staff? So the applicant due to medical issues that we're all very well aware of over the last year, was unable to proceed with construction of the addition to their house. And she is simply, or they are simply asking for an extension of 180 days. My inclination would be to grant that extension. If in 180 additional days they haven't made significant progress, I think we have the opportunity at that point to allow the variance to expire. That's just my opinion. Mr. Marvin.
Just a question for staff. Historically, with extensions of variances, has there typically been any denials?
And to be honest, staff in most prior years has been pretty flexible on that because 180 days is actually a really tight time limit, I've found, when comparing this to other codes. It's only and more recently that we realized that we needed to follow the code as written. So there's only really been, I believe, one prior request to extend the variant, the granting of the variance, and that was approved. Excuse me, there was only one recently. There has been one or two over the years where the applicant was coming back substantially beyond the 180 days, like a couple of years had passed, and in which case, in those cases, we brought it back as a whole new hearing. This issue of just simply an extension without a hearing because they did not meet 180 days, this is only the second one in recent time.
Any other questions of staff?
Mr.
Does
Chairman.
anyone have a motion?
I wasn't in favor of this. However, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be granted an extension of time. So I'll make that motion to approve that extension of time of the variance.
I'll second it.
We have a second from Mr. Marvin? Rudd, sorry, Steve. Very good. All in favor?
And was that
Aye.
yeah, for 180 days? So? Okay.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. The extension passes. Last item of business, monthly progress reports.
No comment.
And that brings us to our final public comment period. For those still listening, the number to call in is 702-589-9629, and we'll have 1 minute to field those calls. Hearing no phones ringing, I will close the final public comment period and bring the meeting of May 19th, 2021 to a close. Thank you all.
You're welcome.